Hello everyone, today we will be observing the best qualifiers on the NASCAR circuit. In order to keep results somewhat consistent, I'm only looking at the modern era, which started in 1972. This is because the schedule size is more consistent compared to today's. It's not perfect, but it helps make things easier to compare. For example, Richard Petty's 1967 season saw him win 18 poles. Seems impressive, but it was out of 49 races, and most of those races had less than 25 cars entered. Also, I only included drivers who have made more than 100 starts from 1972 to 2019. The full list of all the drivers, and their poles, starts, and their ratio from poles to starts will be in the comments section down below. So let us begin by taking a look at the best 10 qualifiers. At number 10 is Darrell Waltrip. 809 starts, 59 poles, and a pole percentage of 7.29%. Darrell Waltrip was a very good qualifier. In fact, his 59 poles is the second most in the modern era. He probably would have been higher on this list had he not elected to run as a backmarker after 1995. From 1979 to 1985, Darrell was a beast in qualifying, managing no less than 4 poles in a single season. He peaked with 11 poles in 1981, en route to his first championship. Darrell was incredible at short tracks, scoring 35 poles in 225 starts, more than half of his overall total. This was comprised of 4 at Bristol, 9 at North Wilkesboro, 8 at Martinsville, and 7 at Richmond. He also managed 9 poles at Riverside. He did somewhat struggle at super speedways with only 7 poles in 223 starts, but that still is quite impressive. One significant track he never scored a pole on was Watkins Glen, which he's 0-14 for. Waltrip managed to win from the pole 24 times. Number 9, Davey Allison. 191 starts, 14 poles, and a pole percentage of 7.33%. Out of all the drivers in this top 10, Allison ties for the fewest poles scored. However, he did this in the third fewest amount of starts, boosting his percentage. From 1987 to 1992, Allison scored at least 1 pole every year except for 1990. His personal best was achieving 5 poles in his rookie year in 1987. Davey was a well-rounded driver in terms of qualifying, scoring either 1 or 2 poles at 9 different tracks. His best tracks in terms of qualifying were Talladega with 1 pole and an average start of 5.3, and Darlington, 2 poles and an average start of 5.4. His weak spots were the short tracks, in which he only scored 2 poles in 48 starts. Martinsville was his Achilles heel, with an average starting spot of 21.4. He only managed 1 top 10 start at the track, a 6th place effort on the 1993 Haynes 500. Allison managed to win from the pole twice, Michigan 1992 and Richmond 1988. Number 8, Bobby Allison. 476 starts, 36 poles, and a pole percentage of 7.56%. Bobby managed to slightly overtake his son in terms of pole percentage. Allison started the modern era with a bang, netting 12 poles in 1972. Unfortunately, he only managed 6 poles in 1973 and never won more than 3 in a year ever again. Bobby managed to achieve the same number of poles as Rusty Wallace, but in 230 fewer starts. Half of Bobby's poles came from short tracks, including 8 at Richmond. The only track he did not score a pole at with a significant amount of starts was Ontario, but he did start second there twice in 8 tries. There is also Texas World, but in 6 attempts, Bobby started twice second. Allison managed to win from the pole 11 times in this time period, including twice at both Richmond and Bristol. Number 7 is Tim Richmond. 185 starts, 14 poles, and a pole percentage of 7.57%. Richmond managed to achieve Davey's pole record in only 6 fewer starts. His best year in terms of qualifying is easily 1986, with 8 poles at 8 tracks. Like Allison, Richmond scored either 1 or 2 poles, but at 11 different tracks. He was very strong at the road courses, recording a 2.5 average start at Watkins Glen and a 7 flat at Riverside. He was terrible at super speedway qualifying, with 18.8 at Talladega and a 24.3 at Daytona. His best track start at Daytona was 9th in 1986, which he ended up winning. Richmond managed to win from the pole 5 times. Pocono, 1983, and then again in 1986, and Watkins Glen, Darlington, and Riverside, all in 1986. At number 6 is Buddy Baker. He made 390 starts, 30 poles, and had a pole percentage of 7.69%. Nice. Baker has won the same number of poles as Kevin Harvick, but he did it in 273 fewer starts. In terms of qualifying, his peak performance occurred from 1979 to 1980, which he managed to score 13 poles in 45 starts, or almost a third of a time. Baker had some prominent favorites, Atlanta with 5 poles and Bristol with 3 poles in 13 starts. In terms of weaknesses, Baker was unable to score a pole at a road course in 13 attempts, though he did come close several times. He won 4 times from the pole, all of which were rather big ones. Charlotte in 1973, Talladega in 1975, Atlanta in 1979, and the 1980 Daytona 500. At number 5 is Ryan Newman, with 656 starts, 51 poles, and a pole percentage of 7.77%. Newman currently stands as the leader in poles won and pole percentage among all active drivers. Newman was incredibly fast right from the get-go, scoring 6 poles in his rookie season, the most of anyone that year. His sophomore year saw him attain 11 poles, the most recent instance of a double-digit pole tally. Newman also managed to break several track records at the time, including Charlotte and Martinsville. However, due to a lack of quality rides in his later years, he has never scored a pole since Loudon of 2013. Newman's strong suit are the 1-milers and the 1.5 miles, scoring 9 poles at Charlotte, 7 at Loudon and Atlanta, and 4 at Dover and Phoenix. In total, 44 of Newman's 51 poles came from a track between 1 and 2 miles in length. He has never scored a pole position at a road course, with his best start being a 3rd at Watkins Glen 2006. Newman has notoriously struggled at plate tracks, with an average start of 19.9 at Daytona and a 14.9 at Talladega. Newman has managed to win from the pole 5 times, most recently the 2013 Brickyard 400. At number 4 is Jeff Gordon, with 805 starts, 81 poles, and a pole percentage of 10.06%. Gordon has the most poles in the modern era, at 3rd all time. He's always been a pole threat, as he has scored at least 1 pole in every single season he ran full time. Gordon averaged 5 poles a year from 1995 to 2001, including 2 7-pole seasons and 1 8-pole season in 1995. Gordon is well-rounded in terms of qualifying, scoring at least 8 poles in each track size. Like Newman, Gordon's best track is Charlotte, scoring 9 poles there, including 5 straight Coke 600 poles from 1994 to 1998. He's also been strong at short tracks, scoring 7 at Martinsville, 6 at Richmond, and 5 at Bristol. Gordon doesn't really have that many weak tracks. He was unable to score poles at 2 tracks, Kentucky with 5 starts and Kansas in 20. Though the average start at both tracks are better than 13th. Gordon won from the pole 20 times. At number 3 is Alan Kulwicki, with 207 starts, 24 poles, and a pole percentage of 11.59%. Now this is a surprise. While Alan isn't even in the top 20 in modern era poles, he makes his feat very impressive considering his equipment and the relatively few number of starts he made. The guy ahead of him in the rankings, Bobby Labonte, only has 2 more poles, but did it in 500 extra starts. Alan managed 2 6-pole seasons, 1989 and his famed 1992 championship season. While Alan didn't score a pole in a road course and struggled at plate tracks, he was solid everywhere else. He managed 7 poles in 57 short track races, 4 poles at Dover, and 3 poles at Michigan, Charlotte, and Atlanta. As mentioned before, the fact that Alan did this in inferior equipment makes this a remarkable achievement. Unfortunately, Alan didn't win as much as he scored poles, only winning from the pole once, the 1992 Food City 500 at Bristol Motor Speedway. At number 2 is Cale Yarborough, with 366 starts, 51 poles, and a pole percentage of 13.93%. Did you know that Cale scored 69 poles overall in his career? Nice. Anyways, Cale had an incredible qualifying record. He managed to score a pole at least once every year from 1973 to 1984, and this includes seasons where he ran part-time, starting in 1981. As of 2019, Cale holds the record for the most poles in a year in the modern era, 14 in 31 starts in the 1980 season. This includes a stretch of 8 poles in 9 races, and sweeping Bristol and Dover. Yarborough had managed to equal Newman's pole total in almost 300 fewer starts. Since 1972, Cale has won a pole at every single track he attempted, except for Darlington, for which he is 0 to 30. However, Cale does have 2 poles at the place in 1969, but that was not included since it was not earned in the modern era. Superspeedways were Cale's backyard, scoring 8 poles at Daytona and 6 at Talladega. Yarborough won from the pole 13 times in the modern era. Finally, at number 1 is David Pearson, with 206 starts, 58 poles, and a pole percentage of 28.16%. David Pearson comes home as the king in this list. Overall, Pearson amassed 113 poles in his career all time, the second most ever. In terms of the modern era, Pearson ranks third behind Gordon and Waltrip, and is the only driver with more than 25 poles to run less than 300 starts. From 1973 to 1978, Pearson managed to score more than 5 poles every year, peaking at 11 in 1974. Keep in mind that Pearson only ran up to 22 races a season, never completing a full schedule. Pearson was strong everywhere he competed, scoring a pole almost everywhere. There were 2 exceptions, however, Richmond and Bristol, but he only made 3 combined starts in the modern era. His clear favorite included Charlotte with 13 poles in 25 starts, which included a streak of 11 poles in a row. Darlington was also his favorite, in which he scored 10 poles in 27 starts, including 5 straight from 1975 to 1977. Pearson was proficient at road courses, winning 6 poles and 11 starts, all at Riverside. This includes another streak, this time of 3 from 1978 to 1979. Finally, Pearson won 19 times from the pole in this time period.